tuning in and welcome to this week's review of The King of Kong, a documentary about the world of competitive video gaming, old school style. Showtime.
Well, Donkey Kong, without question, is the hardest game.
That's a tough machine. People think that the machine is possessed.
The average Donkey Kong game doesn't last a minute. It's absolute brutality.
The mysterious player from the West Coast, Steve Wiebe, is here.
He could beat it if he'd have to have a really good game.
You want to put a score up, you're competing against everybody in the world.
It's not even about Donkey Kong anymore.
He's a very devious person. He works things out to his ends very well.
Well, Billy Mitchell always has a plan.
World Record Headquarters, can I help you?
Well, maybe they'd like it if I lose. I gotta try losing sometime.
Before I even start my review, I want to do something in honor of this movie and video games in general. Movies like this really don't get much play. It's a limited release movie that will virtually make no money at the box office, and the only time most people even see it will be on DVD. I'm just going to say right now, this was a great movie, and I really don't think you even need to be a fan of video games to enjoy it either. I think that if anyone goes in this movie with an open mind, they should find this movie at least entertaining, if not thoroughly enjoyable. Most of you have probably never even heard of this movie, but I caught wind of it, and if it was anywhere near me, I was going to see it. I'm a sucker for video games, especially the old school games from the original NES to Pong. Those were the glory days. You could put a quarter in a video game or plug in a cartridge, and your friends could jump right in and be somewhat competitive. Nowadays, the games have gotten so advanced that some of your friends may need a month to get up to speed with you, if ever. Some of the classic arcade games include Pac-Man, Centipede, Asteroids, Defender, and Galaga. And who could forget Donkey Kong? This game introduced us to the most famous gaming character of all time, Mario. What I never realized before watching this documentary was how hard Donkey Kong really is. They say the average game of Donkey Kong lasts about 1 minute. So to give you a quick idea what this movie's about, there are two people this movie focuses on. The current world record holder of the high score on Donkey Kong, Billy Mitchell, and the person who's trying to break his record, Steve Wiebe. Now, I know this sounds like a very hokey or corny idea for a documentary, but I think if a documentary is done well and the source material is there, it can be a surprisingly good movie. On one hand, you think, who really cares about this record? I would imagine that 99% of people out there had no idea that a world record for this even existed, let alone what the high score actually was. Now, I will say, while watching this documentary, I really found myself totally rooting for Steve Wiebe to break the record. Now, I know it sounds funny, but I started to realize that it doesn't matter what record someone's trying to break if you really like the person trying to do it. In a standard movie, it's what they refer to as character development. The difference between a documentary and a normal feature film is that you try to capture the character by getting enough footage of them. This movie does this extremely well. They give the backstory on all the games and players, the old gaming competitions, and the history of video game high scores. One of the things they discuss is the fact that with older games like Pac-Man, Dig Dug, and Donkey Kong, they all had kill screens. Pictured in the background is a kill screen for Pac-Man. Now, what's a kill screen? This is when a game is played so long that the memory runs out and the game freezes, or something to that effect. Pac-Man and Dig Dug both freeze when the player reaches the 256th screen. Donkey Kong, however, freezes on the 22nd stage or the 117th screen, so the high score can only get so high before the game shuts down. What really makes this movie flow well is the amount of retro footage they have for the 1982 gaming competitions. And considering how obscure this event must have been, it was pretty cool to see there was any footage at all relating to it. One thing is for sure, there's almost a cult-like group of people involved with these older games. These old school gamers just followed Billy Mitchell around like he was Michael Jordan or something. Now before this movie, I never even heard of him. And I seriously doubt any of you watching this have ever heard of him either. And I would say after seeing this movie, he reminds me of a real-life Al Bundy, talking about his glory days at Polk High, where he scored 5 touchdowns in a single game. Now the main difference between Al Bundy and Billy Mitchell is, Al was likable.
Oh, I hate my life. Can't eat, can't sleep, can't bury the wife in the backyard.
Billy isn't. This guy doesn't seem so bad at first, but as the movie goes on, you almost forget you're watching a documentary. Simply because this guy has it all. He's rocking the mullet, he's arrogant as hell, and he thinks he's God's gift of video games. While at the same time, he's really a nobody. Trust me, ask 100 people if they know who he is. And I'd be surprised if anyone recognized his name or his face. By the end of the movie, all you want to tell Billy Mitchell is, get a life, would you? And now for the flip side of the story, you have Steve Wiebe. He really seems like a truly nice guy. You get to know him and his family, and he's a very humble person who just happened to start playing Donkey Kong and thought he'd try to beat the all-time record. He's a former athlete and has several other interests besides the game and the record. And the more you get to know him, the more you like him. The people who made this documentary really did an excellent job in capturing the highs and lows during his pursuit of the record. And you couldn't have handpicked a better person to be in this movie. When you watch Steve play the game, it's amazing how he does it. He has his kids around him and all sorts of people watching him, talking to him, and I can barely even get through a couple levels with no one even bothering me. And hand-eye coordination is extremely impressive. He even had his kid yelling at him while he's taping his first world record attempt. It is definitely one of the funniest parts of this movie. I must say the ending was as solid as the rest of the movie, and it didn't disappoint. And there are plenty of old school nerdgasms for all you retro gaming fans out there. And the only flaw with this movie is the fact that almost no one will see it in the theaters. Some films basically have no shot at getting a wide release for a number of reasons, and this film, unfortunately, was one of them. And hopefully with this contest, this film will get a little more exposure. Overall, I would say this is one of the best documentaries I've seen in a long time. And even though this is a very lighthearted subject, and nothing in this movie really changed the world, it is a very entertaining movie, and I really enjoyed every aspect of this film. And don't take my word for it, it has a 99% fresh rating from the critics, and 97% fresh rating from the users at Rotten Tomatoes. Literally, one so-called critic didn't like the film. I went way out of my way to see this movie, and I'm very happy I did. And I really can't emphasize enough how you don't even need to be a video game player to enjoy this movie. Now before I give my rating, I thought I'd give a little pop quiz for you old school gamers out there. See if you can guess the name of the games the following sounds came from.
Beware, coward.
From overall rating, I give the King of Kong a fistful of quarters. A perfect 5 stars.
If you don't play when you have to play, if you don't play when the pressure's on, you're really not good enough.
Have you ever seen your husband compete head-to-head in video games?
Never. Never.